Hi guys, welcome to Right Now Deep Dive here on Ickonic.com. This week I'm speaking to researcher and author and a friend of mine, Mark Devlin. He was here in the studio with Gaz a few months back. Let's have a look at that interview now.
There's a lot of evidence to show that the whole counterculture scene, coming in the mid to late 1960s, was completely fabricated and orchestrated.
Right.
Or at the very least, heavily infiltrated by the military intelligence services. So a lot of my work in Volume 2 focuses on that era, and it shows the endless ties to the CIA in terms of many of the groups.
So this time I had an hour to sit down with Mark to speak about what it's been like to do this research for 15 years and see this agenda still playing out everywhere. Please do enjoy the interview and leave comments. Hi guys, welcome to Deep Dive here on Ickonic. This week I'm here with author Mark Devlin of the musical Truth trilogy. How are you doing? It's lovely to meet you in person as well. We spoke a couple of times over Zoom, Skype, but to meet you in person is fantastic. And thank you for bringing me a copy of your book as well. It's very kind of you. I do really appreciate it. And we'll get into the musical Truth stuff later on.
Sure.
But there's so much more to you than just the music stuff and the information. I wanted to chat to you about how it's made you feel doing this stuff for this long. You started in 2007, 8, and it's a long time, 15 years, and seeing this unfold, this plan that you've kind of been learning as you go along. How has it kind of affected you as a husband, as a son, as a person?
Well, it's become my full-time job, and it was never the plan for this to be the case. So going back 15 years, I was a full-time club and radio DJ. And prior to sort of 2007, 2008, that was all that mattered to me in my life. The only important thing was the next gig, the next party, traveling around as a DJ, getting hold of good tunes and rocking a crowd. And so my world now is, you might say, a little bit different to all of that. Yeah. And I feel as if I just kind of drifted and stumbled into it. And what it was round about 2007, I just started paying attention to various different authors, and a few books kind of landed in my lap. The books of David Icke, which I've spoken about many times. Graham Hancock's Fingerprints of the Gods had a big impression on me, and various other authors. And I started to revise my entire worldview, and my conscience kicked in. It's something that's always been there. It feels as if my conscience has been prodding me in the ribs saying, you need to do something. You've got to sort this out. You've got responsibilities. And I came to realise that the world is very different to the way we've spent our entire lives being trained to think of it, and that it's run by psychopaths and Satanists, and that they don't have humanity's best interests at heart, and that they seek to steer us down a very dark and dangerous road unless we collectively stand up and resist and say, we're not having this. So I realised that I'd taken on a personal responsibility to do whatever I could to communicate the information that I'd come across to as many people as possible. So I ended up drawing on the skills and the experience I'd built up to that point. So I'd done radio shows, I knew how to interview people, I'd done a lot of DJ gigs, so I was used to addressing a crowd, and I was used to traveling around and doing my thing. So I basically rebooted all the things I was doing as a DJ and represented it in terms of what I'm doing now. So the DJ gigs became speaking gigs. Yeah. The Truth, the dance festivals and music gigs became the Truth conferences and meetup groups. The radio interviews talking about music became interviews talking about things that really matter, such as this. And so I've just drawn on all of that experience. And as I was saying on the show that I did with Gareth the other week, it feels as if everything in my life up to that point was training. It was a preparatory period getting me ready for what would come next. And so now all this stuff is my full-time job, and I'm on it 24/7. I mention a famous hip-hop DJ in the new book by the name of Tim Westwood, who I used to follow, used to look up to him. He used to be a personal hero of mine, not anymore.
Everybody looks up to me, about 9 foot tall. I think I met him once.
Yeah.
He's a very tall man. Yeah.
That's right. But I used to hold him in some high regard. And I remember he had this catchphrase that he used to say on his radio show, and he used to say, no holidays, no days off, because he was making out that as a DJ he was on it 24/7. And that's the way I feel about what I do now. There's no holidays, there's no days off. This becomes your existence, and it is with you every waking hour. I find that the minute I wake up in the morning and become conscious of my surroundings, I'm thinking about my work and, you know, these subject areas. And unfortunately, there's no escaping it. So on the one hand, it's very fulfilling to be able to do this work. And particularly when you know that you're reaching large numbers of people, when you get confirmation of that. And I get emails daily thanking me for what I do, which is very gratifying. But the way I see it, I'm just paying forward what other authors and researchers have done for me. They got me on board with this information. Now I'm seeking to influence other people with it. And so on the one hand, it's very gratifying and fulfilling, but on the other hand, it causes you to carry a huge weight around with you. It's like a millstone around your neck, because you know you've got the responsibility for communicating all this stuff. And so it's a double-edged sword. It's a gift and a curse, to quote the title of one of Jay-Z's albums.
Yeah. So it was like you came from, you spoke about at the start there that you were doing the next gig and you were in the moment and what you're going to happen that week, meeting people. It was very in the moment, almost like an age of innocence, a child kind of playing with the world, and you were in the moment, you were there, but then suddenly you realise this stuff and a future opened up to you, and you were no longer living in the moment, you were living for what would happen in the future.
Yeah.
It seemed like you kind of had to, once you know this stuff, you do go from a childlike state of in the moment wonderness to, oh dear. Do you ever like look back and just think, I wish we could go back to that childlike state of not knowing this, put Pandora's box, put the lid down on Pandora's box again?
Yeah, I do. I find myself quite often wishing that I'd never discovered all this stuff and wishing that I could live in a state of blissful ignorance. But it doesn't last for long, because that conscience is there again. That voice is in my head saying, you know you need to be doing this. You know you can never go back. You know that's no kind of moral life to live. When you discover truth, you take on a responsibility to live in truth, to align your thoughts, behaviours and actions with what you know to be right, to take right action in every situation, and to communicate what you've discovered to other people. So there is no turning back. I do find myself looking at normie families who seem to be so happy.
Yeah.
They've got smiles on their faces, they're doing normal stuff, they're having fun. And I sometimes think to myself, I wish I could go back to living in that way. But you realise there is no going back. I'm probably going to have to spend the rest of my natural life talking about this information and communicating this stuff. That's the responsibility you take on.